It's in this week's parasha, Bo, that we are introduced to the mitzvot. The very first mitzvah, HaChodesh Hazeh Lachem Rosh Chodashim. This month is for you the first of the months. And in fact, from this point onwards, the Torah introduces us to hundreds and hundreds of mitzvot. One in particular is the Korban Pesach, the Pesach sacrifice. And if we analyze that mitzvah, we'll see that there are so many details about it. It has to be eaten in one group. It has to be eaten at night. None of the meat can be left over until the next day. When one eats it, one cannot break the bones. When you cook it, it has to be cooked whole. It has to be roasted, and it cannot be boiled. Why do we have so many details? And in fact, each one of these details is a separate mitzvah. What is the philosophy behind it? What is the reasoning? And the Sefer HaChinuch, a famous book on the reasons behind the mitzvot, which was composed in Spain anonymously several hundred years ago, goes into each one of these points. He says in general, the Korban Pesach is meant to remind us of the fact that on Pesach we became free men. We are aristocracy. We are noblemen. And at least on one night of the year, we're going to act like aristocracy, like noblemen. Well, how does a noble person eat? They don't boil their food, because when you boil something, it's to create more. You want to be able to have more and more, get more out of your food. When you roast your meat, you get much less out of it. But that's how nobility eat. Nobility don't leave food over for the next day. They finish everything. And if something's not left, they throw it away. Nobility have no need to break bones and to suck out the marrow as poor people do. And therefore, on this night, we cannot break the bones of the Korban Pesach. So each detail of the Korban Pesach, of the Pesach sacrifice, is to remind us about the fact that on this night, we are B'nai Chorin. We are free people. Nevertheless, asked the Sefer HaChinuch, why do we need so many mitzvot to hit home this point? Wouldn't one mitzvah do? Isn't that sufficient? And in general, he asks, why do we have so many mitzvot? So many commandments, 613. It's so many. And he tells us a very fundamental concept. He says that a person's heart is affected by your actions. You are influenced by your actions. If you want to change yourself, you can't just suddenly read a philosophy book or have a thought in your mind, this is what I'm going to do. You have to actually do something. And through those actions, you change yourself. And the more often you do a particular action, the more effect it has on your personality and your thinking. So, for example, he says, if you want to become generous, you can't suddenly just become generous or read books about philanthropists. You have to actually give money. And the more that you give and the more often that you give, the more generous you become. And that's why the halakha is that if you have a big amount of money to give, you shouldn't give it away all in one go, but you should try and break it up and give it to a number of different people, because it's the act of giving that actually changes you and makes you into a generous person. And therefore the Sefer HaChinuch says it's true. Maybe one mitzvah might accomplish this task, that you would know that you are nobility, but it's not enough. You have to do it often. And that's why, in fact, God gave us so many mitzvot. We think it's a drag. We think it's a burden. But it's not. The Talmud says, Laman tzidko yagdil v'yadir. He did it for our sake, to benefit us. How we benefited? He wants us to change our actions. He wants us to become good people. He wants us to become close to Him. That's why, for example, we wear tefillin on a daily basis. We have a mezuzah on our home. We have tzitzit on our garments. We have Shabbat every single week. We do the mitzvot, we do many mitzvot, and we do them often so that they can have an effect on our personality. So we have to be very thankful to God, not that it's a burden that we have mitzvot, but indeed it is something very, very great. Because even a wicked person, if he starts to become involved in doing good things, he can change his personality. But it's through actions that we change ourselves, not through thoughts and not through philosophies. And therefore we should start mitzvot today. And as our sages say in Pirkei Avot, mitzvah goreret mitzvah. When you start one mitzvah, when you do one mitzvah, it ultimately leads to another. Because you are accustoming yourself, you're making it part of your habit, part of your routine to do mitzvot. And ultimately, this changes us into better people. I wish you a Shabbat Shalom.